Howdy, it's tubalcain, and I'm standing again by this 9-inch South Bend lathe, and it's cold in the garage. It's April 1st here, but it's April Fool's Day, and it's fooling us all right. It's very cold and windy, and it's the year 2016, in case this video is on for many years. But the subject of this video is chip pans. Now, I was recently called back to the high school, and I was there for 2 weeks to fill in for the welding teacher who was gone. And they got a brand new box and pan brake there by Grizzly, and I'll show you some pictures of that. But I didn't take any pictures of making up these chip pans, and I made 3 of them. One for the South Bend, one for the Atlas, and one for the Logan lathe. And boy, I got a tight fit in there, but it'll be all right. But I didn't show you how I bent these up. That's done last week. You're not going to see that. You know, it was total mayhem and chaos in there, and it was not conducive to filming. And I could go on and relate some experiences that all happened in a 1-week period here, but I don't think I'll lay that on you at all. But it wasn't as pleasant as I thought it would be going back, and I'm just too old, I guess. But I got a few things done down there while I had access to some equipment. But what I'm going to do in this video really is to show you how to fasten the corners by soldering. Now, on some of these I already riveted them, and I don't really like a rivet, and this doesn't have to be watertight, but I'm going to show you how to solder galvanized, because it's not particularly easy to do if you have never done it. So that's the subject of this video. But watch for another video in the near future where I make belt guards. I'm going to make a belt guard here for the South Bend, and I'll probably make one for my Atlas lathe as well. So hope you enjoy this video as I show you some more old technology. I'm right next to the South Bend now. This is the Craftsman Atlas lathe, and you have seen that. And this is real narrow. This is a maple board here, and it's only 9 inches wide, the same width as the one on the bottom there. So I made a pan that is the width of the board for this Atlas lathe. So I'll see you downstairs in a few minutes where I'm going to show you how to solder. Now I'm back down in the basement by my Logan lathe, and you can see that I've already made a chip pan for this lathe. And every one is custom made. And this particular one is, the corners were fastened with tinner's rivets, and I don't really like that, so I'm going to solder. But I made these pans from some galvanized that I got at an auction one time, but it's only 30 gauge. I prefer 28 gauge for this, and I did have enough left, it's 30 gauge, to make one more for that other Logan lathe out in the garage, and it's the one that has a big hole in the pan. That should have been my top priority, but hindsight has 20/20 vision, and due to that youthful exuberance in the shop that had turned to chaos, I had to turn my attention to the business at hand, and now I no longer have access to that machine, that brake. But you can see the 30 gauge is really a little too thin, but it is what it is. Also notice that I put the hems on the outside rather than the inside. If anybody actually ever makes one of these, and they won't. But that way, when I dump the chips do not hang up in the hem. And a hem, of course, is used to stiffen an edge and remove the sharp edges, and it makes it look a lot better. But so much for that little dissertation, and that fits just right in the Logan lathe. So let's go on over to the bench and talk about soldering. This is the chip pan that came with my Atlas Craftsman lathe, the old lathe, the one I've had for many years. So I didn't make this, but that's a nice pan. It's obviously thicker. It's probably 28 or 26 gauge, I'm not really sure, but you can see what it looks like. So that's kind of what I'm modeling after. And you know, this solder joint here was not done very well by whoever did them, and it wasn't me. And you know, I see what looks like rosin on there, and you really can't use rosin at all on galvanized. So let me tell you everything I know about galvanizing, and you were afraid to ask. I don't think I ever showed my Miller spot welder, and you can see I haven't used it lately, but a spot welder is just not the machine or the tool that you need for fastening galvanized metal. The welding just doesn't work well, and I used to try it and it would pop loose, or you could walk away from the bench and you hear a ping as the weld let loose, because you hadn't made a weld, and the zinc melts at a lower temperature than the steel. And basically, I'm just telling you, you can't use a spot welder, so it has to be some kind of mechanical fastener. It could be a screw, it could be a rivet, it could be soldering, but any method but spot welding, resistance welding. And I might show this in an upcoming video if there's any comments on this. Maybe I'll include that in my How It Works series. 15 years ago, I had an incredibly large quantity of galvanized sheet, and they were all cut to the same size. They were drop-offs is what they were. So to find a use for them, I made, I don't know, I probably made 40 little tote boxes like this, and I didn't put a hem on them because it was thick enough to where it didn't need it. But the reason I'm showing you this is I pop riveted the ends on. And I really don't like pop rivets because they stick out so far. I think they're unsightly on the one side. They're actually quite attractive on this side and ugly as sin on the other side. So I don't really want to pop rivet these chip pans or tinner's rivets. And I was using tinner's rivets, and well, I guess I put them away, but I had some aluminum ones and some steel ones. And now I'm going to show you how to solder, and I got to quit blabbering here, but I'm going to show you how to solder galvanized, because it is nothing like soldering cold rolled steel. I know I'm talking a mile a minute here and changing subjects and jumping around, and part of that's because I had 5 cups of coffee and it's early in the morning, but you know, I got my old buddy Woody here helping me. And you know, I was going to take Woody and I was going to slaughter his guts out like I did with that bass, Billy the Big Mouth Bass. But nobody watched that video, so I guess he's going to survive. But I wanted to see how this thing worked, because it's not electronic. It's you pull that cord on this. So I think there's a tiny little record in there. I might do that, but I get discouraged when nobody. I just threw him on the floor and he's squawking. But what I'm showing you here, really, I got more solder and soldering supplies than Carter has pills. And this is only a small portion of it, but I've got acid core solder here. No, I don't. I've got tons of rosin core and solid core, and I got it in all the various alloys and mixes. But I threw out all of the acid core because it's incredibly corrosive, and just anything that comes near it gets corroded. And I even had to throw several drawers away over the years that were corroded. But for what I'm using for the galvanized is soldering liquid, and one of my favorites, I used to get it by the gallon at school. It was called Ruby Flux, and I got to even keep it in a bottle because it corrodes the lid away. It used to come in a glass bottle, but what I'm going to use this today. Liquid soldering flux, and it's very corrosive, but that's great, along with a soldering brush. And out of all this solder, I'm just selecting some solid wire, 4060. I'm just choosing it arbitrarily. Now look at all the rust. Usually I can identify my acid core solder just by how corroded the spool is. Well, now they come with a plastic spool. And then the label comes off, and then you don't know what you got. But these can get so corroded you can't read them. But this is corroded simply from being near other soldering acids and products. But you got to have something strong for galvanized, and I know I'm getting just a little bit off the subject, but I'm giving you what we call related information. When I was in my prime at the high school, we used to do a lot of soldering. We had what you call a soldering bench, and it was covered with transite, which is asbestos. Of course, the kids would pound on that, and that would crack, but we used this type of soldering furnace, a Johnson, but I had a 3-burner, and we used the old soldering coppers. They weren't electrical, you just put them in here, but if I didn't watch closely, the kids would get them way too hot. Matter of fact, they get that copper red hot. And then the solder would run all over the place. But you know, a 13-year-old boy has to learn all of this, so they were on their learning curve. But that was long before they had cell phones and all of this other nonsense. You should see it at the high school. Everybody was on a cell phone, and they all got these chrome pads, and they got earphones in, and a free breakfast, and just about every other device you can think of that violates everything that we learned for good education. So I was mortified by the changes in the last few years. All right, now I got off subject again, but this really wouldn't be done anymore at all. But you've seen big soldering coppers, and they were also heated by blow torches years ago. I scrapped all of mine. I don't have any. Now for soldering sheet metal, forget about these useless little things. And somebody put that on upside down, or maybe they did it for a reason, but I didn't do that. It came from a garage sale. You know, these are 50 cents at every garage sale, so I got a bunch of them. Nobody solders anymore. And the widows don't know what they are. They think they're curling irons. So use a big electric one. I don't know how many watt this is, but it's plenty hot. But you're better off if it even has a larger tip on it than this. That's only about 3/8, but I found it to be satisfactory for this 30 gauge. But then again, we got the 50/50 solid wire. Don't even think about using solder paste on galvanized. Did you hear that hit the garbage can? What is this? A block of sugar? A piece of lard? No, this is sal ammoniac. How many of you people out there know what sal ammoniac is? Because that's kind of a thing of the past too. And even on this old Kester, they call it a tinning block. They don't even use the word sal ammoniac, and you can tell how old that is. And I think that it's deteriorated from the acids that were in the box, probably not the sal ammoniac itself. But we always had a block of this at the high school for tinning, and I'll show you how to use that here in a second. But I always like to start by filing the tip, so I got bare copper, and then I'll tin it. But you know, I got chewed out in one of my videos. Somebody said, you can't use a file on copper, it'll embed, blah blah blah. And well, I've been doing it forever, so. But I suppose some people are even more of a purist than what I am. I should have cleaned this up before I made the bends, because we have to clean the galvanized. Even though this is bright shiny zinc in relatively good condition, we have to get rid of all the corrosion, and there's still corrosion on there. And we want to get down, not to bare metal, because we're not going to take all the zinc off, but I'm using a little emery cloth, and I'm going to clean that up real good here and real good here, so that it is bright, and that will allow the acid to get in there. And to me, that's very necessary. Don't half step. You've got to clean it with galvanized. Oh well, you do it with steel too, for that matter, and even copper. You know, it's all got to be clean. That's what it's all about. If you don't get your metal clean for soldering, you will have a failure. So I'll do that off camera, and then I'll bend these back just by hand. This 30 gauge is so thin that it's easy to form by hand. All right, here's my setup. I already put some of this soldering fluid, it's clear, looks like water, into a little throwaway cup, and I got a acid brush, and since I have a lifetime supply of these, I throw them away when I'm done, and I'll throw this container away. And anything that you use, wash, and wash your hands right away. You don't want any of this in your clothes or your eyes or anything else. It's nasty stuff. Even though it's a mild acid, it is an acid, as far as I know. But what I like to do first, even though I used this half hour ago, I like to take a file, and it's hot, and take it down to bare copper, Need to rest it against something, but I'm doing this for the camera right now. And after you do all four sides like that, oh, that's hot. And then I like to, this cord is in the way, I don't want to burn through it. I like to set it down like this and rub it on there, and that will tin it. You need to tin it on all four surfaces, so I'm going to do that off camera. It wasn't too bad to start with, but if it's been sitting around, you need to tin it. Then when it's tinned, it'll probably hold almost enough solder to do a joint. Now I'm going to set this aside here without burning myself, if I can. That cord is most unruly. And take some of this. Hell, I have to reposition the camera. You can see I've got the work held in a vise here, so it's semi-sturdy, although it's still going to move around. There's a wooden block on the other side. And can you see that I have brightened this with abrasive? Tried to tap it down a little bit. I don't like that corner. And I'm holding it with a vice grips. And the vice grips is pretty much out of the way, so it won't interfere with the soldering. And remember, only the solder that's between the two pieces is doing any good. If you got big blobs of it every other way, every other place other than between the two, it's not going to do any good. And you want it to look fairly smooth and pretty if you can. From time to time, I like to take just a little bit of the liquid and do that. Now be careful you don't touch other things on your bench. If you got micrometers and other things sitting on there, the fumes are even corrosive. Now you need to can you see the solder getting drawn in by capillary action? See if I can zoom in on that. And that's exactly, that's exactly what it should look like. Now that's still hotter than a pistol, so don't take your clamp off until you're sure that the solder is hardened, which doesn't take too long, but now I take that off, and you know, I gotta set this. A hot iron like that is wicked. Matter of fact, I just set it down. Can you smell the wood burning? Oh, that's hot. Now, did you notice the blob of solder that landed over here didn't stick, and in fact was drawn in? Now, if I were to open this up, you would see that the solder is all the way in there. Now, again, I'm not concerned about waterproofing this. That is how you solder galvanized iron, galvanized sheet metal. Remember, it's coated with zinc. And the purpose of galvanizing, of course, is to prevent rust, mainly used in outdoor applications, and it does not take paint well. You never want to paint something that's galvanized. You don't want to weld it because it is poisonous to weld, but it's all right to solder. Now I'm going to do the other three off camera. You know, I changed my mind just for the heck of it. For those that are interested, I'm going to do one more joint. Remember, an acid brush is a throwaway. I've already put some liquid on there and I got it clamped and cleaned. Can you see the abrasive marks? Yeah, I know you can. You can see that steaming off. Now, if your joint separates a little on you, I think I'll get some into the bottom here too. As it cools, you might want to take a screwdriver or something and hold it down if it has separated a little bit. And can you see it cool and crystallize? And after that you can let the pressure off of it and it's going to stay where you want it. And you can see I need a little more solder in there if I wanted it to be watertight. But I may not have cleaned it up very well down in there, so the solder didn't run, because if it isn't clean, your solder's not going to run. And this is all about making buggy whips anyway now, isn't it? One last joint. You know, I haven't done this in 25 years on galvanized. I don't do much soldering. And you can work your way down the joint like this. Now I'm working at a funny angle because of the camera and that clamp. I think I'm breathing hard. Then you go back over and smooth it a little bit too. Watch it crystallize. It's quite pleasurable when you see that. I know this video really ran long. And probably most people have gone some other place by now. Hope not. I suppose this is illegal, but what I'm doing now is getting rid of the soldering liquid, and then I'll rinse this out real well. And I'm throwing that away. I'm throwing the brush away. Right outside. I don't want it down near my other tools. And then I like to wash the galvanized off. And I'll even use just a little bit of a fingernail brush on the outside. And you get that all neutralized. I'm probably going overboard on this. And if you want to put a little baking soda on there, you can do that as well. Wash your hands real well. Then I'm going over to the bench and I'm putting everything away, and I'm going to put that soldering liquid in a baggie because I'll probably never use it the rest of my life. And there it is. Chip pan for the South Bend lathe. Hope you enjoyed this video. This is tubalcain saying so long for now, and be sure and watch my 700 other shop videos.